Michael Corleone, Cosa Nostra, these comments from Ted Cruz. How do you respond?
Hey, listen, we're 40 points ahead of him in New York, right? I always say we're coming home. We're coming back home. And so we're going to do so well in New York. We're going to do so well in New Jersey, in Pennsylvania, in Maryland, in California. We're beating Ted in all those polls. And I don't think he likes where he stands right now. I mean, I think his kind of, any momentum that he might have had, and he didn't really have momentum. He was always kind of in his territory, but it's over. We're going to reach at 1237. We're going to do incredibly well. So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of sound bites. I kind of stopped listening to them at this point. I almost zoned them out. We are doing so well, and I really think we're going to hit that number.
The numbers are unbelievable, particularly when you look at a place like New York. Donald Trump is a New Yorker, so it's no surprise. But talk to us about what you're expecting in New York in the general election, because we know that you're going to see good numbers in New York on Tuesday night.
Well, listen, it's a rarity for a Republican to win New York in the general election, and we will. I mean, there's just no question about it. We will. I mean, if you look at the state, if you look how we're polling, we're going to win New York in a general election, and I think that's amazingly powerful. The same thing, you need Florida in a general election. You saw how well we did there. I mean, we blew Florida absolutely out of the water, and so, I think that really bodes incredibly well for a general. If you win those two states, for all intents and purposes, with a couple others, it's almost over, meaning if you keep the status quo of the usual Republican-Democrat division of the other states. So.
The overall northeastern states should be, I guess, pretty positive, although Ted Cruz is spending a lot of time in California. What's your take on California? This is a big one as well. A lot of delegates up for grabs.
Yeah, California, it's 175 delegates. California has been a second home to my father. It's a state that we have, tremendous assets in. We know it very, very well. And we're leading in the polls there as well. We're leading by 10, 11 points consistently. So California, we're going to do great. I mean, we're really going to do great. And I don't think there's a state out there right now where we're not leading substantially in the polls, and it's really our turn. We come home to the Northeast. We've always been fighting on somebody else's territory, and in the South, and we've done so well, and we're still leading it down there. We're finally coming home, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited about Tuesday.
Yeah, it definitely feels good. It feels really good for Donald Trump. Let me ask you, because your father has talked a lot about the process. Yeah. Now, Ted Cruz is asking supporters to pitch in $35 to become his official deputy delegate. It seems confusing to me, official deputy delegate. In a fundraising email sent to supporters, Cruz says, quote, "Well, not everyone can be an official convention delegate. I'm asking you to join my online team by becoming a deputy delegate today and sending in $35. He's also promising to send the following, quote, deputy delegate card to Cruz contributors. What do you think of this?
Well, I want to actually meet the people who come up with this, these slogans and the marketing surrounding the fundraising. I mean, it's incredible. I'll walk into a room and people are like, oh my God, this is the first time I've ever been at a political event where no one's asked me for money. It's really refreshing. We're self-funding our campaign. And honestly, I'd say it's probably the single greatest point that I hear from voters all the time. It is so refreshing that somebody's putting, their money where their mouth is. They're doing it themselves. They're doing it for the good of the country. As to the deputy, delegate, I don't know what to make of it. I mean, it does seem a little hokey, to say the least. I mean, I think hokey's probably the best word for it.
The process in general, I don't know if it's hokey or just confusing, but to win the popular vote or to get all this, support amongst voters and then not get the delegates is a little strange. But those are the rules.
Yeah, strange, dishonest, crazy. I mean, look at Louisiana, right? We win the vote. We get less delegates than somebody who didn't win, meaning we win. I mean, we win the state by a lot, and we get less delegates than another person. I mean, look at Colorado. I mean, it's insane what's happening there. People didn't even get to vote. That's not democracy. In America, you're able to vote for the candidate you want. I mean, here you have a party who tweets out, "Never Trump," right? Who says, we're going to call off a vote. We're just not going to have a vote. We're going to pick the candidate that we want. I mean, that's not democracy. That's not the United States.
Yeah.
What's going on there? I mean, it's absolutely insane. It's really insane.
It is the rules.
And by the way, it disenfranchises a lot of people.
Yeah.
If you look at my generation and why they're not, right, it disenfranchises a lot of people. It's actually very sad.
Well, look, I got to ask you about this because I think you were just about to say why young people are not out voting. But you and your sister Ivanka, you're not eligible now to vote in the New York primary because you missed the deadline to register. Yeah. What an oops moment that was for you. Yeah. I know you both of you have been campaigning heavily for your father, urging people to go out and vote.
Yeah. Well, listen, that there's no one that's been by my father's side probably more than me. There's no one that's probably been by any political candidate's side, more than Ivanka, Don, and I, right? I mean, we've spent a tremendous amount of time there. In New York, you have to register to vote 9 months or 8 months before the primary. It's insane. It's not like most of the other states where it's like, okay, day of or 3 weeks before, you select your party. You have to register to vote. 9 months before. We weren't even involved in politics at this point, right? So we let a kind of arbitrary date pass. It's insane. So Ivanka and I, after that happened, we found out 3 or 4 days after that date passed in October, we literally went out state by state and we created a video of how to vote, when the registration deadlines were.
Yes, I saw the video.
I mean, it's insane. We literally line this up for people because it is such a convoluted process. It's such a crazy process, especially when it's 9 months out. I mean, New York is one of the toughest because the deadlines are so far out, and it's sad. You know, if you live in a state, you should be able to vote. You shouldn't have to jump through these hoops. I mean, you can't even figure it out. By the way, it took me a couple hours online to go through and figure out all the dates because there's different dates if you just moved into the state, and there's different dates if you voted before, and there's, I mean, it's really actually a little crazy.
Did you check yet that you're registered for the general election?
Oh, there's no question. No, there's no question. But
I mean, how are you going to, it's not going to happen because we see the polls already, but imagine if, like, your father lost by 3 votes or 2 votes.
I've got millions, I've got millions and millions of New Yorkers who are standing behind us. Believe me, you know, it's, for me, it's honestly more of a sentimental thing. I've spent so much time with my father on the campaign trail. I've spent months of my life, you know, on this process because not that I have any aspirations for politics, but I want to see him win. He's such an amazing guy. He's such a competent guy. He would do such an unbelievable job. So it bothers me in here. It's not going to make any difference on Tuesday. We're going to blow it out of the water. But literally, that was the auspices for every video that we created in that outreach of when to register, how to register, how to caucus.
Understood.
That's another example. People didn't know how to caucus, so we, you know, explained it to them.
Well, that's another thing that I learned during this whole process about caucusing. All right, earlier in the program, we had on an Indiana delegate. I don't know if you saw the interview, but it was Tom John. And he claimed that he's being threatened after expressing reservations about the Trump campaign. Here's his take on Donald Trump saying that the delegate system is rigged. Listen to this, Eric.
People have not seen a contested convention, even possibility, since 1976. And this is something that's new to many of them. The party rules haven't changed. When Mr. Trump pushes back and says the system's rigged, the system isn't rigged.
How do you respond to that, Eric?
Listen, I think it is. You know, I think it is. Again, I don't mean to point at Colorado again, but you had certain, you know, delegates that were put on the ballot 2 and 3 times. You had other delegates. You had Trump delegates who showed up who were turned away. Sorry, we no longer have a spot for you. I mean, they were literally turned away. And, you know, I think to a certain extent it is rigged. I mean, it's really sad. I mean, it's really sad when a party that picks the delegates is tweeting "Never Trump" in a state. That's insane. You know, that's not partial. That's not, you know, that's not fair. It's, again, not democracy, especially when the people couldn't even vote.
Shows you how polarizing this situation has become. Let me ask you, we've talked a lot about immigration. Obviously, your father has really resonated with his thoughts on that and on trade. What do you think is going to be his most important priority? Let's say, hypothetically speaking, he wins the presidency. In the first year of his presidency, what is going to be his most important policy on priority list?
Well, certainly deficit would be up there. I mean, he's preached 19 trillion, 19 trillion. This is insane. We can't bankrupt our country. I mean, he's an incredibly practical guy. It infuriates him to see our federal, you know, our national deficit going up. It just infuriates him. Obviously, immigration, right? That obviously ties in with deficit, but, you know, he will build a wall, and he will make Mexico pay for it, believe me. I mean, he absolutely will. And, you know, people talk about it being complicated to do. It's not complicated. You know, the buildings we build every single day are much more complicated than building a wall, albeit that it's a long one. But, again, that's something he'll do. He cares tremendously about the vets. You know, he spends a lot of time talking about the vets, and he wants to reform that system because it's just not working, and it's, you know, a hole for fraud and abuse. And listen, there's a lot of other things, but those would be. And listen, he wants a strong military. I mean, he wants a strong military, and he wants prominence in the world again.